Peace, everybody. I'm doing this video today because the Small Business Administration has, let me think, 30 billion minus 1.5 billion is $28.5 billion available to low income businesses or businesses who are located in a low income area who have experienced a 30% reduction in gross revenue within an 8-week period of time in 2020 after the pandemic hit in comparison to 2019. But the thing about it is, you literally have to be located in a low income community, or in other words, a black community, right? So a huge amount of Caucasian owned businesses saying that, and business owners are saying that they are being discriminated against because even though they might have had a 30% reduction in gross revenue, they aren't located in a low income area. And check this out. Now, I think this is pathetic on a part of the Caucasian male who seem to always expect things to be given to them for nothing. Yet they always complain about so-called other groups of people who get things for free. Look at this. Did the Small Business Administration discriminate against white business owners because they're located in non-low income communities? Like, this is something really. This is another wrench that Donald Trump threw into the game, because last year when they actually was distributing PPP loans, the first draw and the second draw, Trump actually allocated, really in the first draw, he allocated $20 billion. Really, I think the second draw, $20 billion of the money was allocated to black owned banks to ensure that the so-called black people would get their fair share of the PPP loans. And this Small Business Administration, when they actually required that, this is the let me look at this. This is the targeted EIDL advance, supplemental targeted advance, meaning they got to basically up to $15,000 that you can get that doesn't have to be repaid from the SBA if you could prove that your business was located in a low income area and you experienced a 30% or more reduction in gross revenue. But this is the complaint that the Caucasian is giving, that they should be allowed to tap into this $30 billion, even though they don't live in low income areas. And when they do live in a low income area, it's usually gentrified. And what I mean by gentrified is they remove the previous population, and then they replace them with so-called high earning individuals. And what that does is that increases the average, what they call it, the average income, the average gross income of the community goes up. You know, that's how they judge zip codes, based on the average income of everybody combined. So when they gentrify a community and move the Caucasians in, it is no longer classified as a low income area. So right now, even though out of the trillions of dollars that was distributed by the SBA and by the Trump administration to give to these businesses, the Caucasians want to have access to this little $30 billion that was specifically allocated to communities that were low income communities. And there's still $28.5 billion left, because the problem is this. Before the pandemic hit the United States, there were very few black owned businesses in these low income communities. And we had a situation in which we had President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, who did very little to increase the amount of black businesses within those 8 years. And then we had President Donald Trump, who passed the Opportunity Zone Act and several other laws and policies, including the First Step Act, to try to increase the amount of black businesses, you know. And then we had a whole entire year, 2020, which we had the pandemic, which the entire economy was shut down, and we lost even more black businesses. So Trump had probably 2.5 years to increase the number of black businesses who could actually qualify for this $30 billion. And it shows you that the entire failure, because the entire black community in the United States, especially the people who live in low income areas, can't even qualify for $30 billion. All that was distributed was $1.5 billion. This is a tragedy. And I think what needs to happen, these Caucasians are suing, trying to get access to this $28.5 billion that's left over, that was allocated to low income communities, claiming that they were discriminated against, claiming that they should have access to that money. But this money should be repurposed. Instead of saying it should go to people who were in business in 2020 and 2019, it should be repurposed into being able to finance black businesses, the creation of black businesses. Because we have $28 billion that these Caucasian men don't have access to, or these illegal immigrants who live in middle class communities. See, right now, this is showing that even though don't nobody want to live in a low income community, it is an actual benefit right now, because there's $30 billion that was allocated due to Trump to low income communities, but to business owners who were actually in business. But what's going to happen? Are they going to let the Caucasian male, the white male who's claiming discrimination, are they going to let them get this money, even though they don't live in low income communities, even though they have been subsidized for the last 200 years with free land, free housing, free businesses, free everything? And the couple of crumbs that was finally allocated to low income people, in other words, black people, they want to get that. And it's not just so-called white men, it's also the so-called immigrant population, because the so-called immigrant population have been consuming the crumbs, the affirmative action crumbs that was allocated to the black people since the 1960s, 70s. And they have been consuming so much, there was really nothing left over. And by them consuming the crumbs that was left over for the black people, they have elevated themselves outside of low income communities, so they can't really benefit from this. And then the so-called white women who have been consuming the crumbs of the so-called black people through affirmative action, who actually consume the most out of any other group, they don't have access because they have to prove that they live in a so-called low income community. Let me read this. Let me read one of these. Let me read this right here. Let me read this whole thing. I'm going to read this whole thing. Forget it. The Restaurant Revitalization Fund was set up as part of Biden's American Rescue Plan to provide much needed money to restaurant owners who were devastated by the economic recession caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The approximately $29 billion fund providing grants representing the difference between the revenue a restaurant recorded in 2020 and 2019, a potentially substantial check for many, and is being doled out by the Small Business Administration. Except there is a problem. It's probably discriminatory against white men. That's the case being made by multiple lawsuits filed last week by a group of business owners and advocates in Texas and Tennessee. They say that the program unfairly prioritized the distribution of funds initially for the first 21 days to minority business owners and those in low income and moderate income areas who are statistically likely to be people of color, black people. That's according to the plaintiff, discrimination against everyone else. So this right here was just for the first 21 days. The money was doled out to so-called low-income people of color who could have been people of color, but they know they were so-called black people who were allocated to these impoverished ghettos. But this is not the targeted, what I'm looking at right here. This was just for restaurant owners. This is the targeted EIDL advance program. Applicants for the COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan may be eligible to receive up to $15,000 in funding from the SBA that does not need to be repaid. These advances are similar to a grant, but without the typical requirement that comes with a U.S. government grant. To receive the advance, you must first apply for a COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan. You do not need to accept the loan or be approved for the loan to receive an advance. Once you apply for the loan, SBA will invite you via an email to apply for one of the advance programs if your business is located in a low income area. Like, your business has to be in a low income area to receive this advance, right? And they have $28 billion that hasn't been doled out yet. So a lot of so-called black people probably don't even know about this program. Literally, if they live in a low income area, if their business is located in a low income area, they could just get the advance. Targeted EIDL advance. The targeted advance provides up to $10,000 to applicants who are in a low income community to help applicants determine if they are in a low income community as defined by section 45DE of the Internal Revenue Code. A mapping tool is available. The business address must be in a low income community to qualify. So SBA encourages potential applicants to check the map to see if they meet low income community eligibility requirements before they apply, and can demonstrate more than 30% revenue reduction during an 8-week period beginning on March 2nd, 2020 or later. If an applicant meets the low income community criteria, they will be asked to provide gross monthly revenue, all forms of combined monthly earnings received, such as profits or salaries, to confirm the 30% reduction, and have 300 or fewer employees. Now, this is particularly this is not what Biden set up. This actually is what Trump set up, because business entities normally eligible for EIDL programs are eligible to apply. These include sole proprietors, independent contractors, and private nonprofit organizations. Agricultural enterprises are not eligible, so farmers can't get none of this. All communication from SBA will be sent from an official government email account ending with sba.gov. Please do not send sensitive information via email to any address that does not end with sba.gov. So this money is available. The white men want access to this money, but they don't qualify because they don't live in low income communities because of gentrification and because of redlining and recovered racism. It finally came back to hunt them. But look how pathetic it is that they are trying to get the crumbs, the crumbs that was left over for black people. They want access to those crumbs. Not just the immigrants, not just the so-called people of color, but the so-called white man want to get the small amount of money that has been allocated to the black people. And because of years of destruction of our businesses, of racism, whatever you want to call it, we don't even have enough businesses to even take advantage of just $30 billion. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this, this situation. So-called white men are screaming racism. Not just white men, but Latinos, East Indian, all of the people of color, even white women are screaming discrimination because they can't get their hands on this money. Not this money. This money was just for 21 days. I'm pretty sure they done devoured this 29 billion already. But this is the money they want to get. They want this money. The disaster loan money. The targeted advance money. They need that, and they can't get it because they can't prove that they are located in a low income community. But that's about it, though. I just want to make a video about that. Yeah.